Hello everybody, today we're gonna look at the game of Fabiano Caruana, the world number 3, versus Faustino Oro, the wonder kid of Argentina, the Messi of chess. He has 8.5 points out of 11 and Fabi 9.5. So let's see what happens. He starts with e4. By the way, this kid is 12 years old and he's already an EM. So the Sicilian defense, the most combative opening, and Faustino goes for this attack where you attack the knight. And Fabiano will try to play maybe some d5 in the future. So castles, the knight defense, because once you take, earlier you had to damage your pawn structure, and now you can just take back with the knight. The rook moves, so after h6 you drop the bishop all the way back home, close to the king. And now the knight goes out this way, so now the option to take is back, because now he will damage the pawn structure. But he says no, I just want to build for the center, because then you have, if you take me, I have 2 pawns in the center, and that would be really nice. So develops the bishop so he can castle, and there Faustino goes, grabbing the center. Fabi takes, and plays this move d5. He says no, you're not the only one having the center, I also. He says, but I'm closing up, so I have a lot more space than you, because my pawn is on your side of the board and your pawns are not. So the bishop develops, and the knight develops, castles, and the bishop drops back, because he wants to get ready for an attack to the king, because he wasn't really gonna take the knight, trading it for the bishop. It would just be used as an attacking point. So now he puts the attack to this side, and Fabi plays the bishop back, defending, and he just plays h6 to defend this square for the knight or the bishop, because then he would go after the bishop, or he would pin the knight. And now this move h6, stopping this bishop from ever coming out, or this knight from ever jumping. And now he puts pressure to the knight with the queen, but now there's this nice rook. The rook comes, and it will be hitting the queen in the future, or pinning the knight to the queen. He just develops his bishop, and nice move from Fabi, f5, the best move in the position, because you don't want to take en passant, because let's say we take en passant, then the rook just takes, and now our strong pawn in the center is gone, and his rook is activated. This knight is still well defended, and maybe in the future black will play this move e5, which after he is likely to be better. So that's why you don't take en passant, but after this move f5, he played b4, grabbing space on this side of the board, not allowing the knight to come in. And Fabi just plays h6, a slow move, defending this square from ever letting a piece move there. And now the rook comes to c1, so moving it to the open file, so maybe when you move your pieces, the rook has this nice vision. And now the bishop wants to trade off against this bishop. There was a better move, and that's f4, because then you just put a clamp on this position, you grab space, protected by the rook and the knight, so you're not gonna lose the pawn, and you usually can cramp up all these pieces of white, because they're kind of in a box. But instead of that, he moves the bishop, and the best move was just to take it with the knight, grab the bishop pair, because after knight takes and the pawn takes, it's just an alright position, because you can maybe play this. No, you can't do that because then you would be trapped, but the best move is knight a4, looking at these squares, and this isn't really scary. But instead of taking the bishop, he played the queen to b3, because he wants to play b5, and get his pieces in on the queen side. But now Fabi plays this nice move f4, and great move. The knight attacks the knight. You can take, but after takes and takes, there are problems with this one. So that's why he drops the queen back. But that's a blunder, and it's because of the move Fabi played. Try to find the move. 3, 2, 1. It's the bishop, pinning the knight to the queen. Put PP on PP. Put pressure on the pinned piece. Now this is a pinned piece. The knight is the pressure. So now the bishop has to retreat, defending the knight. And after take, find why this is such a bad position. Because the pawn in the center hangs. Now you're just down a pawn without compensation, because black has compensation. He has the strong pawn, your pawn is weak. He has the rook that's active. The queen can come in at any moment. f6 is on the way. Opening up the king. This rook will be active. The king is always safe in the corner. But Faustino Oro is one of the best players in the world. One of the best. He's the strongest 11-year-old. So let's see. The rook is attacked. The rook moves just to the d-file, getting active. He grabs the bishop. And now f6. Discovery at the rook. Rook moves back. And he takes the pawn. And this is a good idea to know. Sometimes you don't want to take the pawn or push your pawn forward, because if you take, this diagonal gets opened and your king will be weak. And if you push forward, then there are queen ideas to mate you. Something like this. He moves to e8, then he moves to h5, and then here, and then this will be checkmate if the pawn was here and your pawn is pushed. So sometimes it's better to be taken and not take back the pawn, because now none of the pieces, if the queen gets on this diagonal, it will just stare at his own pawn and it won't do anything, because you can capture your own pawn, and the pawn is always barricaded by the king, so it will never promote. So Fabiano activates his rook and the knight centralizes, hitting the pawn, which would be a fork. Fabi sees it, and there was an idea. If you move your knight somewhere, of something like this, you will lose this pawn. So that's why he already defends it for in the future. The knight is hanging, he drops it back. And now the bishop moves back, because you don't want to lose the bishop for the knight. And h6, nice move, creating a square in the future maybe for the king, stopping a rook from going to this square. The bishop just moves back. They have 30 seconds, so they're just waiting for Faustino to make a move. Now he takes the pawn because he thinks he's out of danger, because the queen has gone to the other side. This check is protected. But Fabi just slides his queen over to activate his rook to get even more control of this file. The queen moves in, looks dangerous, but there goes Fabi's pawn. It's a really strong pawn, he just wants to push it all the way down, maybe protected with the queen. Now the queen drops back, hitting the rook. The rook just retreats one square, then defended square, putting pressure to this pawn. And now he just plays h5, because he doesn't really have any other useful move, because the rooks are well placed. The knight has to stay here to defend the pawn. The queen is not trapped, but it doesn't really have a better square than this one. And after the move rook to c3, Faustino just resigned, because there's no way to handle all this pressure, because the knight is pinned to the queen king. The knight is pinned to the queen, and you can't defend it, because you would just lose a rook. So he would lose a knight. He's already down a pawn and all the compensation. Black's pieces are more active, so that's why he resigned in this position. Unfortunately, the road number 3 is still better than the Messi of Argentina, but he has a bright future ahead of him, so we'll see him definitely back on his channel. And it was 92.5 accuracy of Fabiano, which is really good, because it's a blitz game, so it's really hard to have an high accuracy. And Faustino had an 83, but it's also because it was just a tactical game, so it's hard, especially in such positions where everything's closed. You don't really know what to move. You're gonna start making inaccuracies by the computer, and then this blunder, allowing the pin, losing the pawn, and then just this position. It's just worse for white. You cannot really do anything, especially not against Fabiano, who is up 2 pawns, has all the activity, has the bishop staring all the way. This is just a dominant position for black, so it's fortunate that he lost, but he still did really well with 8.5 points out of 11. So I guess I see you all in the next video. Check out my previous videos and like and subscribe if you liked it, and definitely watch my other videos. So goodbye, have a great day.